So without further ado, I'm going to ask Rob to come join us, and he's going to talk to us about learning in the age of disruption. So Rob, thank you very much.
Great. Good morning, everyone. So thank you for that introduction. It was a lot of fun to be here last year. I think maybe the way I would describe what I'll try to do a little bit is, well, let's see, are you all prepared? Have you all had coffee this morning? Are you ready for a quick teleportation deep into the future and then maybe back? It could be a little disruptive for some of you, but hopefully it'll catalyze some different kinds of conversations for the day. So first, let's see if I can get my slides. How are we doing back there, Anita? One more minute. So maybe as a quick, deeper introduction to myself, I really think of myself as an engineer and an entrepreneur. I went to grad school at Stanford, was a geeky tech engineer. Ended up dropping out of the business school because in 97, 98, the dot-com madness was maddening. I didn't understand it at all. I didn't get it. I wanted to build cool stuff. And ended up starting a company building robotics and automation for cancer research and drug discovery. Built that up pretty successfully for about 10 years. Sold it to Agilent. Worked at Agilent, pretty big company for a few years as a general manager. Learned a lot about big company bureaucracy and innovation process, right? And it was really so much different than the startup mentality that I had. And I eventually gave up and left. And I met this guy, Peter Diamandis, who had just started Singularity University along with Ray Kurzweil and an amazing cast of characters. And he's like, hey, you should come check this thing out. And so I ended up attending the first executive program. It was a week-long program at NASA Ames right here across the street, diving into the future. I walked in the door thinking I was the expert in robotics and biotech because I just built a leading-edge robotics company, been in and out of pretty much every pharma. And in this week, I'm discovering things happening in robotics and biotech I did not realize were already happening. I was like, wow, how do I think of myself as an expert in this space if I don't even know what's happening in my space? And this probably feels relevant to most of us, right? It's getting harder and harder to keep up with anything that's happening. And an expert means you go really, really deep and narrow into something. So where do you go to get a broader perspective? The second epiphany that really hit me was I learned about things happening in neuroscience and nanotechnology that were converging to disrupt that robotics business that I built. And I thought, wow, thank goodness I sold my business when I did, because it was in trouble. I didn't even see it coming. And unfortunately, I think that's the situation for every business and every industry and society today. In fact, I'll suggest that exponential technologies are disrupting every aspect of our lives, every business, every industry, and society. So I'm gonna dive into the future a little bit, but for me, where it's super relevant and where I'm thinking the most about is for these two. This is Beckett, who just turned 4, and Romy, who is now 9 months. These are my 2 kids. We had quite a journey to have these kids. We're a bit older, so we were really naturally prepared to have kids the old-fashioned way, so we used some technology. If any of you want to learn about that, I would happily do a sidebar, because it is a wacky, wild world, very taboo, and kind of in an ugly way. My wife and I vowed to be very public about what we went through and what the status of affairs is, and wow, is that space changing radically. And I'll touch on that a little bit in a moment. But when I think about their future, by the time they're my age, their life, their world is radically different. Their future is radically different than my past. Radically. And when people throw that out there as, oh, our kids are going to face change, that happens every generation. Not like this. Not even remotely. This is 100x or 1,000x radically different paradigms that we're going to have to prepare our young children for. So I'm going to dive into what I think their future looks like from my sort of unique perspective at Singularity University, where we have lots of technologists, startup companies who are really leading the charge to transform the future and create the new industries, tackle the grand challenges, and really shape the future. So let's start here. I was an engineer, so of course my son is going to be an engineer, as is my daughter, right? Not really, but this is actually like 6 months ago. We were playing with a few different apps, obviously. This is such a natural thing for him. But one of the fun things that I did is we have industry partnership with Autodesk. We were using this app called 123D Catch. So we could take a series of photos of anything, right? So we take a series of photos of a cup or a bottle, and then it turns it into a 3D model. And then we put it into 123D Sculpt, and he can like turn it in and put a face on it and make it bigger, smaller, color it, shape it, and then we just send it to the 3D printer. And we print that thing out that he just designed. He literally just designed an incredibly complex new product that I went to grad school to figure out how to do, and I was not very good at it, and he already has transcended my capabilities from grad school as an engineer. And that, you know, it sounds sort of, maybe it's not a real capacity, but actually I think the future of engineering is totally being transformed. It is going to be about intention, not about all the specs and the math and the design pieces. It's about the intention. What is this thing supposed to be? And a 4-year-old is pretty clear about what he wants that thing to be. And then the tools and the automation will do all the rest of it. So that kind of freaked me out. Like, okay, well, he's probably not going to be an engineer then. At least not the way that I was an engineer. I also know that as he starts to talk and learn and type, he is going to be connected to everyone on the planet. And I mean everyone. Google, in Hangar 2 over here at NASA, is building these big balloons. Facebook has drones and satellites. OneWeb is building satellites, all with the effort to connect everyone on the planet, basically for free, to the internet. Which means then they have access to crazy tools that have never existed before. XPrize Foundation, also started by Peter Diamandis, has a $15 million global literacy prize to create an app that in 18 months will let someone go from illiteracy to reading, writing proficiency. It gets dismissed, you know, maybe it's a little too heavy-handed, maybe it's not going to work in certain regions, but this is one of thousands of interesting things. And so I know that content learning for specific types of skills is only going to be digital. That's not going to be school the same way. Not the same way. There's going to be school, but for a different thing. So that's interesting. I also know as he starts to read and he starts to try to navigate this internet that he has connection to, this is kind of what it looks like on a day-to-day basis. It is noisy, scary, wacky. I don't know how to figure it out. I mean, for me personally, I have a rule that I do not look at the news during the week. Because I'm crushed. If I open up the news, it's like a thread that I just keep pulling and pulling, and by the end, I don't know how to think about it, right? Because that's all that's rattling around my head now, and when I go to work, I'm like, I can't think about this, like we're talking about nuclear war and all these other crazy things. I'm devastated. And how much of this is real, fake news, who knows? How do I equip him to navigate that crazy space? And we don't even have to talk about porn and all the other wacky stuff that's there. How do we prepare them for that? My son already knows you don't actually drive a car, you let the car drive itself. Right? We have a Tesla that half the time it drives itself. He sees these things driving around all over Palo Alto all the time. He's like, oh, Daddy, robocar. By the time he's going to drive, he's not going to drive. Neither one of them are ever going to get a license. Maybe go to the track or do other funny things, but not day to day. I'm pretty certain of that. When he's ready to go to college, he's not going to go to college. At least not the same way I did. Right? There's these interesting platforms that help them find their learning path. Right? This is a Singularity EdCast's instance that we're exploring, figuring out how to teach all the things that we have. He'll probably still go to an institution to socialize, find resources, unlock his passion, and find challenges that he wants to work at. Kind of like what Singularity University tries to do with people. I think the future of the university will probably look more like Singularity University, which is not a traditional university. It's the future of the university, maybe. Just a thought. Also, right now we're really concerned about making sure we turn off the lights when we leave the room. But energy's getting cheap. It turns out energy's abundant. Totally abundant. There's more energy that hits the planet in an hour than all of humanity uses in a year. We just don't have the technology yet to capture and store it so that we can use it. And the curve of solar PV capacity is exponential. If you look at the last 5-6 years, it's increasing exponentially. The cost of solar PV is decreasing exponentially. Already about a quarter of the planet is at parity for cost of solar to other means. or alternative energies and oil. At some point, is it 30 years, is it 10 years, is it 50 years? Somewhere in there, energy is going to be really, really cheap, virtually free. Which means transportation is cheap, food is free, water is clean, and that's for everyone. Everyone on the planet. And I think he has the opportunity to see that potential future of abundance. What does that mean for the economic system and everything else that he's going to be dealing with? And does he just think about energy? He's actually going to be going through that transition phase, clearly. His kids, however, are going to be living in a world where you can just leave the lights on forever. In fact, you turn all the lights on. In fact, you waste the energy because there's an abundance of it. It doesn't matter. And if there's an abundance of a resource, my utilization and waste of it doesn't hurt or harm anyone. It doesn't take away from anyone because there's an abundance of it. This mindset is so radically different than the one that I grew up with that I struggle, and this is what we think about every day, I struggle to figure out how to prepare someone with that mindset who's going to be living it. Oh, but I might live it too. Because there's a lot of fun companies like Human Longevity working really hard to let us live to be a lot older. Their stated mission is they're going to make 120 the new 60. As in, you're going to be as healthy as we are at 60 at 120. And if you ask any of the guys that work there, Craig here, he says, yeah, 300 is my number. Peter Diamandis, who also was a co-founder, he's like 700 is my number. Because he's done some math, and 700 years will take him so far into space he can explore some interesting places. And these guys are not crazy. I mean, well, okay, wait, they're a little out there. But they have some really credible paths to what they're doing and showing where we're at. Aubrey de Grey, one of our faculty, pretty notable person thinking about longevity. He suggested, and he's got some interesting thesis, that if you live another 20-ish years, every year beyond that, you're going to gain another year. As long as you don't get hit by a bus or something stupid. And maybe it's not 20 years, maybe it's 30 or 50, but I think most of us are going to see really curing cancer and fixing most of the problems and ailments that plague us today. So what does that mean for him preparing his future life? How does he think about religion if he doesn't think he's going to die? It's a sort of weird concept. How do we have that conversation, and when do we have that conversation? And then when he's ready to have kids, he's going to decide what he wants them to look like and be like, and he's going to have the capability to decide every aspect of their physical structure. Already in the US, just a few weeks ago, we've published that in a US lab, we've re-engineered a human embryo to eradicate a genetic heart condition, which is amazing. If any of you have kids and you knew they had a disease, you would, and you could stop it, you probably would, right? For both of my kids, we used IVF, in vitro fertilization. There's a moment where you have about 8 to 10 cells, you can pluck one cell off, you can sequence it, you can see all the genetics, what that person is going to grow into. And when you're doing IVF, you have lots of those embryos. You basically pick the one that you want that has the best genetic condition, right? Boy, girl, blue, brown, all those things are that we can do that today. In fact, we do that today. It's not all public, but we do that. But the CRISPR technology says, okay, you know what? Here are these 5 genetic disorders that we can just stop. We can turn those off. Great. If I was going to have another kid, which I'm absolutely not going to have 2 is enough by far. But if I was going to have another kid, I would say, yes, turn those off. Because the implication on their life is extraordinary. The cost to society, their future, is crazy. So how do I prepare him to think about that? And yeah, if he wants him to be 11 feet tall and blue, he could do that too. Maybe what concerns me most today is that capability exists. This little US lab is one of hundreds of labs around the world. In the US, we're not going to do designer baby commercialization anytime soon. I don't think. I could be wrong. We've been wrong before. It could happen sooner than I imagine. We probably will allow people to turn off these genetic disorders. But the US is not the only place doing this work. right? There are amazing labs in Tel Aviv, in Shenzhen, China. And the ethics and morality of the US versus the Middle East versus China versus other places are radically different. And so who gets to decide what is the future of our species? And who's actually talking about that? What's the working body that is coming together to decide, is the future of Homo evolutus, which is a new species of humanity, okay? And how do we think about that? We're still having horrible fights between a skin color in the US today of the same species. Imagine if we have now unlocked a new species, which it's out of the box. There's no putting this back. How does the world deal with this? We're at the dawn of this age, and no one is aware of it. No one is talking about it, and we're absolutely not preparing ourselves for this, what I would say is an inevitable future. I actually believe it's a brilliant, beautiful, amazing future where we've eradicated these problems, and we're going to have a beautiful spectrum of humanity. I'm going to call it humanity, but it's going to be a lot different. And of course, my kids are going to go to the moon, if not Mars. I'm hoping I get to go with them. At least to space. I'm certain we're going to do a space trip. They already know that they can do that. My son has already met the people that have gone to space. He's met astronauts. He's met people that are building rockets that are currently going to space. He's met people that are about to land things on the moon. It's accessible. It's accessible. It's a real reality. This wasn't a reality for me. I fantasized about, Star Wars and NASA. Different paradigm. So how do we prepare them for this? Most of the talk about education preparedness is like, how do we fix standard scores and things? No, those evolutionary things are obsolete. We need total revolution thinking in what is needed to prepare these kids. So I think one way to think about it is we live in a world that's moving exponentially, and we need a different mindset, different tools, and a different support structure to help us keep up and be more adaptable to this exponential curve. One of my favorite people on the planet, Astro Teller, captain of moonshots at X, which is formerly Google, has a great statement. In a constant state of destabilization, which is what we're in, the new kind of stability has to be dynamic stability, like riding a bicycle. Humanity has to learn to exist in this state. Anything that we're doing that's about doing something, getting a degree, and being done is obsolete. It's not going to work. It's not going to be adaptable and dynamic. At SU, we have a specific thesis about the mindset that leaders need. There's 4 key components. You need to understand technology and have a way to be aware of and looking at it. You need to be able to think farther in the future, be a futurist. Think about the longer term horizons and implications. You need to be innovative and adaptable, and you need to be humanitarian. You need to be also grounded to understand the real reality of problems. So we have processes to work on that. Also, when I think of the jobs that my kid is going to do, I have the benefit of being able to zoom way out into the future. Right? We're at Singularity University, we're constantly teleporting ourselves farther and farther out. When I zoom out as far as I possibly can, and I think, what is possibly left for humans to do? Because automation, AI, all this stuff, it is going to do all the basic tasks and what we call jobs today. I think we're going to very soon, and there's some amazing people here today that you're going to hear from, Josh and others. This concept of jobs, I think, is going to go away. The thing that you have to do to survive is going to go away. And we're going to talk about endeavors. So my 4 E's, the future lasting endeavors, are all around empathy, entertainment, and exploration. And I've been working on this for a while, and I'm hard-pressed to think of anything else that doesn't fall into those 3 big buckets. So happy to dive into what that looks like. The other piece is you got to find passion. And so one of my most important goals for my kids is to make sure that they're curious and they're finding things that they really want to dig into and make a difference on. At Singularity University, we challenge our students to come up with ideas to impact 1 billion people within 10 years. Take these technologies and solve what we call the global grand challenges, because that takes us into that future of abundance more quickly. Also, I want to just make sure we stay grounded again. the things that we did to get where we're at are not the things that are going to help us transform. I took this last weekend in San Francisco, as I walked by. This is the reality. How do we make sure that we don't get paralyzed by that localized problem, these real issues that we're faced with day to day, and lose sight of the long-term opportunities and potential? Because if you all you do is read the news and focus on the problem that's right in front of you, you're going to get angry and feel disenfranchised and make bad decisions and vote in funny ways, and that is not necessarily going to get us to a positive future. And so all of us, all of our institutions and ourselves personally need to make sure we carve out time to look at a white space of possibility and opportunity longer term. Because I think we have two choices. I think we're on a path now. We're going to either blow ourselves up, which is unfortunately I think a greater than 0% chance, or we're going to work really hard to make some radical revolutionary transformations to create a future of abundance. And I think the best way to predict that future is really to engage and to create it. So hopefully this doesn't set too weird of a tone for the rest of the day as we talk about the future of education, but thank you for teleporting in the future with me this morning. I hope you enjoy and come up with some very innovative long-term thinking about the future of education. Thank you very much.